Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Today I thought I would have a little bit of a chat about shooting fire in the studio. So if you've ever photographed fire and ended up with nothing but a giant white blob, or your subject looks like they're standing in daylight and the flames have disappeared, or everything's overexposed but your subject becomes a silhouette, then perhaps this video is for you. So I recently did a couple of shoots in the studio with models Sky and Emily, and it was a bit of a learning curve to learn how to properly expose for the flames as well as expose for them too. I'm going to talk about how to avoid having the fire overexposed or blown out, also having your subject overlit or underlit, or even having the fire underexposed. Now, why these problems can happen: if you use a camera meter, they often get confused by bright flames, and this is a flash of light. It's not a continuous flame that's burning. If you're using flash, often too much flash can kill the mood, and it's difficult to judge just how much you need sometimes. And if you're using flash and trying to use TTL, it's often going to struggle in these situations. We're going to look at how to fix it by exposing for the flames and exposing for the subject, and using constant light as a little bit of fill light to get the look you're after. So in both cases, we were using a special mixture and bubbles to set fire to. It's quite safe to use, but as you can see, they really are just a quick flash and then it's over. So how do you fix these issues? So it can be a little challenging. For instance, in this particular image, the flames are blown out. In Lightroom, I can bring it down a little bit, but then my model gets washed out. And once you've lost the detail in your highlights, you're not going to really get them back anyway. So start by exposing for the flames, which is easier said than done, and it did take me a couple of trial runs to get it right. Shoot in manual mode makes things a little bit easier. Underexpose your ambient light, if there is any, just slightly. And I use constant light as opposed to flash, just to make it a little bit easier. So I was using constant light just as a fill light to give a little bit of extra light to the face so that it balanced out to the fire. So as you can see in this one, where we have quite a small flame, I relied pretty much solely on the ambient light with a little bit from the flame to light my images. Whereas if I look at something like this image here, where some of the light is a little blown out, I'm quite happy with most of that, as it lights her face up quite well as the rose, and we can still see what's happening. This was a little less light. I didn't like where the flames were covering her face. And then there was this one, which is just even a little bit more light. So using manual mode and LED as a fill light, I can then set my shutter speed, etc., and expose correctly for the flames. Okay, so let's have a little look at my basic setup. So I had a black background that was set behind my model. It was just black seamless paper. I had the newer CB200C on a light stand, but I was only using it at about 50% power. I think it was probably on 5,600 Kelvin, which is pretty much where I use my flash and my constant lights at. I just like it to be quite neutral. Now, this diagram isn't exactly as it was. The light was in roughly that position, but it was up high and pointed down onto my model, and I was standing in front of my model with my camera. So let's have a little look at some camera settings. So you could use between ISO 100 and 400 depending on your camera, your lens, how bright or dark it is. My aperture, you can go between 5.6 and f8. Shutter speed, you want to be looking at least 1/160th to 1/200th. As I said, white balance, I was roughly at about 5,600 Kelvin. And you could use single autofocus to make sure that the focus is on the model's face, not on the flames when they go. Key points: make sure that fire is your hero, let that light the scene. The constant light just adds just enough fill light so that you can easily see your model. Keep the constant light subtle to maintain the mood, and protect the highlights in your flames as much as possible. Try not to overexpose. Okay, so for my actual camera settings for this shoot, I was shooting at 2.8. My ISO was on 640. My focal length was roughly around 30mm. I was shooting with my Tamron 28 to 75mm lens. And I had my shutter speed at roughly 1/160th of a second. I did go up to 1/200th of a second, but I found that for this particular thing, the sweet spot was 1/160th. Just a few final thoughts. Remember to be fire safe, so always have a fire safety warden. Make sure you've got a fire extinguisher on hand and that everybody is safe and you've got nothing that's flammable in the area. Apart from that, have fun with it. This is loads of fun to capture. So just remember that the fire really should be the hero of the image, as well as your subject matter, of course. Your constant light is simply there to support the story, not overpower it. If you want to have a go at using flash, you can do that too. I just found that constant was easier because what you see is what you get. So whether you're photographing fire performers, creating creative portraits, or simply want to add some atmosphere to your image, I hope these tips will help you create more dramatic and believable fire portraits. What has been your biggest challenge if you've ever shot with fire? I'd love to know in the comments. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing for more creative photography tutorials, lighting tips, and behind the scenes videos, as well as loads of inspiration. And that's it for this week. I will see you next time on YouTube. Bye.